the Intersection Podcast. Inspiration, transforming lives from the inside out. The Intersection Podcast. With Ken Gober and Donnie Shell Jr. Is the Intersection Podcast? Come meet us at the crossroads.
Hey, I'm Ken Gober, and this is the Intersection Podcast, Charlotte Rescue Mission. Yes, we have a podcast, and we have a great show for you today. One of my partners is here. Hey, Mr. Ryan is in the back doing the ones and twos. And what should we say about Donnie? Honeymoon. Donnie is out on a honeymoon with his wife, a long vacation while we're here working and grinding doing our show. But we have a great show for you today, and boy, do we have a great show. Hey, check this out. We have our chaplain. We have a chaplain here at Charlotte Rescue Mission. Dave Bogran is our guest today, and he is our resident chapter here at Charlotte Rescue Mission. How you doing, man?
Hey, Ken, man, I'm doing great, brother.
Man, it is awesome. Let me see, man. This is like 2 weeks in the running. It's hard to get them to tie them down, but we do have them today, and I believe we have a great show in store. So, Dave, tell us a little bit about yourself, man.
Well,
where you from?
First of all, I appreciate the opportunity of being here with you guys, man.
No
I know you guys are launching this podcast. It's going to reach millions of people. That's what we're praying for, but
Yes.
I thank you for the invitation. Well, my story is kind of unusual, but anyways, my parents immigrated from Honduras, Central America.
Okay.
Landed in New York City in the late 60s. Met each other in New York City, fell in love, got married, and then they had me.
Well,
So I was born. I turned out pretty good. I mean, the important thing I came out. But anyways, born in Brooklyn, New York City. Lived there for about 2 years. And then moved out to California, man.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, so we lived in Northern California for a while. Then we went back to upstate New York. We lived in a little town called Amsterdam, New York,
Okay.
right outside of Albany. And then we moved to Maryland. From Maryland, we moved back to Northern California. And then we ended up in San Diego, man.
Wow. Now, that's my wife's favorite place. The best weather
San Diego.
in the world. Okay.
Beautiful. So I graduated from high school in San Diego.
Okay, so you settled down
Yeah.
in San Diego.
Yeah. Well, from there, God began to work. So my dad was a pastor. I grew up hearing the gospel, but had never made a personal decision for Christ. So I was really just living my own life, going back and forth. And then I came, and we'll talk about that later, but I came to know Christ, and then God just changed my direction completely.
Wow, man. I mean, you had a journey in the beginning of your life. My goodness. Now, your dad was a pastor. Was he a missionary, or he was moving from church to church?
Well,
from a pastor
actually, he
perspective?
only pastored 10 years in San Diego.
Okay.
So he was moving because he wanted to continue to grow in his faith.
Okay.
And so he would meet men that were, knowledgeable in the word and were serving Christ. And he just felt that he had to be close to them for them to pour into his life. And so willing to leave everything behind.
Wow.
Remember our first move to upstate New York? I mean, he had, everyone who comes to America from a different country has one goal in mind, and that's to reach the American dream.
Right.
And my dad at that moment we had, a beautiful home. We were going to private schools, 3 vehicles, but he just felt led by the Spirit of God to go to upstate New York to grow in his faith. And we sold everything in 2 weeks. All we had left was a little Chevy Chevette. I was about 8 years old. And everything we had left over, we put in a small U-Haul truck in the back and moved to upstate. So the times we moved, it was because he just felt the Spirit of God leading him to continue to grow in his faith.
Now, did you have any other siblings, or it's just you?
Yeah, I had a sister and also a younger brother.
Okay.
So we were 3 in the family.
So now, and I grew up in a Christian home as well too. So I saw great examples. But how did that affect your life, and then even now your ministry, especially the traveling back and forth and understanding, or did you understand the Lord's call on your dad?
Yeah, well, now, of course,
Yeah.
having known the Christ and the Lord, right? Everything, is cleared up, because what my dad taught me was, even in America, you can live a life of faith.
Mm,
It's interesting, that little town in upstate New York, my dad knew no one. We had never been in that town.
right,
There was no job waiting for my dad.
right.
It was a step of faith. But he just, God led him. And it was great, because those 5-6 years was just fabulous as a family, right? He was growing spiritually. My mom was growing spiritually. We had, just a great experience going to a Christian school, a solid Bible church. We met missionaries going all across Latin America as well in that place. So today, what it helped me was to be able to also live a life of faith in the direction that God was leading us, taking us to different countries of the world. For me, at the time, maybe difficult, right? Because you had to leave a lot behind. But today, I can say it helped me understand and comprehend that there's nothing more important than obeying God's leading.
And I'm glad you ended with that, because I'll go back to initially you said that everyone that comes into this country, that American dream is that big thing. So how do you juxtapose the American dream to God's vision as you're looking at it now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, God's will is completely different, because God's will is what we're called to obey if we know him, right? And so that's what my dad taught me, right? Because he was willing to leave everything behind, not knowing what was, ahead. And that's the same calling that Abraham received in Genesis chapter 12, where, God tells him, Abraham, I want you to pick up everything you have, and I want you to go. And the passage says that God didn't even tell him where he was going to go.
Going, just say go.
He just said go. And so, and that's our walk with God, right? It's really a life of faith, even though, even the word faith in the Greek speaks about reasoning and, evaluating. But at the same time, it's the direction of the Spirit of God telling you, hey, I need you to do this, and be willing to pay that price.
Yeah, trust and faith. So then, okay, so you graduate from high school.
Yeah, and so many years of rebellion. So my dad didn't know what to do with me, right? So I started to abuse alcohol at the age of 13. At the age of 15, began to use drugs. I'm thankful, because it's all, and I talk to a lot of guys about this and people, but through God's grace and his favor, I never became an addict.
Right.
I was a binge drinker and partier, and so we do a lot during the weekends. But I knew if I would continue in that cycle, I was going to end up in a wrong place. But anyways, my uncle was going to start a business in New York City. And so he somehow connected with me, and he said, why don't you come with me and help me start the business in New York? And so I was in California. I said, I'm going to go to New York City with my uncle, but first I'm going to stop in that small town.
Okay.
And I had family there as well. And so I went back to that same church that I grew up in. So that church, I went to the Christian school there.
Right.
I went, was part of the church there. But God had it that he was going to place a missionary in that church that was going to be used to confront my life, share the gospel, and that's where I came to Christ for the first time. So that was the 1st of September, 1991.
Okay.
So went to a small retreat with 12 people. I was 18. I was about ready to go to New York City, but I said, I'll go to the retreat. They invited me to go to that retreat. I was working, and so I said, I'll rest for that weekend. But man, that 1st of September, that man got up, small group, but he started sharing about the love of God like I'd never heard before. He highlighted First John chapter 4, verse 10, and this is love, right? Not that we loved God, but that he loved us, sending his son in propitiation for our sin. And man, that night I was just shaken. I realized I was a sinner, that my sin separated me from God, that my dad's faith was not my faith, my mom's faith was not my faith, that I needed to comprehend that what Jesus Christ did for me was, something that he did because he loved me and because I needed it. Because without his sacrifice, I would not ever receive his forgiveness, right? And also to understand what really life is all about. So I remember that night, he said a phrase over and over again. He said, he would say, if you were the only person on earth, Jesus Christ would have died for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that shook me. I started thinking about all my friends. I said, which one of my friends would be willing to give his life for me? None of them.
Yeah, right.
None of
right,
them.
Right. Yeah.
And so, man, that moment I said, Jesus, you did this for me.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I'm your enemy, because as a sinner, I was an enemy of Christ, he was willing to love me so much to give his life. And so that night I rendered my life to Christ.
And you know what, too? I'm glad you said that, too, because that's the difference between, I think a lot of times people think that, oh, you grew up in a church, oh, man, you're a church boy. That's what they used to call me. But I think people don't realize that just because you're in the church, you hear the word, you understand the word, you know what it's talking about. You have visions and witnesses from your family and from your friends and from your mentors until it hits you that this is for me too. It really, you're really kind of just being a robot until you have that experience for yourself.
Yeah, it's planting. That's what our parents did, right? That's what my
planting
parents
that
did.
seed. Yeah.
They're planting that seed
Planting that
because
seed.
it's a personal decision, right? Everyone has to come to grips with the fact that Jesus Christ died for them.
Yeah.
And that's why this is not universal, right? It's exclusive.
Yeah.
But it's inclusive because it's for everyone who comes to him.
Who comes to him, right? Yeah. You know, in society now we have this. Well, that's what you believe, but it's one thing. It's one thing. So this is great. So now we're here now in Charlotte, North Carolina. One, how did you come to Charlotte, North Carolina? And then just tell us about your day to day. What do you do now as a chaplain, as a minister on the ministering staff? Tell us a little bit about your today.
Well, after I came to Christ, I was 18, and I started just to eat up the Bible. I started to read the Bible like crazy. And so I said, I want to learn. I want to know more about this book. And so 4 months after that decision of coming to Christ, and that same night, I also rendered my life to Christ. Right. I said, Christ, whatever you need, you can do with me, whatever you want to do with me, I'll give it to you. I gave it to them all. So 4 months after that, I knew I had to get out of the country, because if I went back to California, my friends would eat me up, right? Because they were involved in things I knew I shouldn't have been involved in.
Right.
And so I just didn't feel strong enough. And so I said, I'm going to go to seminary. And that's what I did. 4 months after I came to Christ, I went to Argentina to Bible school.
Okay.
And I went through a 4-year, my plan was to go for a year, but God had other plans and had me stay for 4 years. And went through the seminary there in Argentina. A fabulous 4 years. I grew in my faith. I got to know God's word. I started to see conviction just be a reality in my heart of who God was and what He wanted me to do and live through and also live for. And that's where I met my wife. But it was in that place where God placed a heart for missions. And so I started to see the world the way God sees the world, right? Because, Ken, from the book of Genesis all the way to the book of Revelation, what we see is a God of missions, right? He has a heart for the nations. And so I started to pray about what He had for us. And God took us to the country of Honduras, the country of my parents.
Okay, right.
So my mom had come to Christ when she was 15, but she married an unbeliever, right? Until this day, my dad says that was the worst decision my wife could have made, right? Because she didn't know what she was coming into.
What she was getting into.
Yeah. And so, but by God's grace, my dad heard the gospel by a pastor that was used in a special way, and he came to Christ. And so, I was about 2 years old. And so my dad never heard the gospel in Honduras.
Wow.
He heard of Jesus, he heard about the Bible, but he had never heard the clear message of the gospel. And so I felt a burden to take that message and go reach the students. Our ministry was focused on students. And so we were there for 12 years. All our kids were born in Honduras. I've got 3 kids.
Oh, okay.
And so we also built a youth camp right outside the capital city. So during our tenure there in Honduras, we preached to over 600,000 people. We went into local schools, universities, plazas, parks, churches, anywhere we could to share this message that one day transformed our lives. And so just a beautiful, beautiful time in our lives. But then we just felt God was leading us to come back to the States. We lived in Atlanta for 4 years. I was a Spanish pastor in the city of Atlanta. We had a church of about 350 Hispanics from probably 18 countries in Latin America, I mean, all over the world. And then 9 years ago, God led us back here to Charlotte, not back,
Okay.
but to come to Charlotte.
To come to Charlotte.
So I'm one of the pastors at West Cabarrus Church in Concord,
Okay.
a fabulous church there. We're right on Bruton Smith Boulevard, about a mile from the Speedway and another mile from Concord Mills. And I am the assimilation and missions pastor. So my heart is to mobilize people to the nations. Now, we work with the community as well, so I'm also responsible with our connections with the community.
Okay.
So we work with ministries like Cooperative Christian Ministries, which help a lot with single mothers and their children. We work with the ministry called Present Age, which work with sex trafficking, pulling these women out of sex trafficking. We help with that. We help with Love Life as well in town. Which we love life, and we want to lead women to love life as well, and to see their pregnancies through. We're also working with ministries like teaching the Bible in public schools. So in our county, it's interesting that we have teachers that teach the Bible in public schools.
Yeah, that is.
And so students voluntarily go and learn. But my heart really is with international missions.
Got you.
So when you realize that there are over 3 billion people
In the world.
Ken, that has not heard the clear presentation of the gospel, right?
That's a lot.
Have no access to the gospel, that moves my heart. And say, Lord, do what you need to, right? And so we go to countries like Morocco. We're involved in Indonesia. I've actually have a missionary in my house right now from India. And so it's unbelievable to see. There are 400 million young people in India, right? 77% of Indians, right, which they have the largest population in the world.
Yeah, in the world, right, right.
1.2 billion people, and 77% are Hindu, right? 10% they say they're Christians, but that includes Catholics and different other religions. But the need of the gospel is so real, and so. That's what I do, and so I train people. But at the same time, I also work for Marketplace Chaplains, which allows me to go into places like Pilgrim's Chicken Plant, for example, which I go to in the morning before I come here, where we have the opportunity of also talking to people from all different parts of the world. And share the gospel with them.
Share the gospel,
But also be able to come and be an encouragement to you, right? As Charlotte Rescue Mission. And you guys work hard trying to help these men and women, right, going through these difficulties, and to be able to come and pray with you guys, encourage you, saying, hey, keep going, is a blessing to me as well. So. And
then, so what is the? I was researching a few days back, and it says that being a pastor and a minister, in the traditional sense, has certain roles, but then being a chaplain has certain roles. How do they intertwine, or do they intertwine? Now, we know it's all about the gospel, but the roles and responsibilities, what do you see the difference between the chaplain and
the sense of a pastor in the Bible, in the New Testament, and in the Greek has to do with shepherding.
Right. Okay.
And so I intertwine them and connect them with that same way, right? And so either you're dealing with people that don't know Christ. Well, obviously, I want to shepherd them for them to come to know Christ.
Right.
Just this morning, I'm working with a young man from India. He came to the States. He studied at Indiana University, by the way.
Okay, the Hoosiers. That's what
so he's a graduate from Indiana University. So he's a Hoosier, but ended up here, and he's working at this plant. And so he had a girlfriend from Mexico whose parents were Catholic. Started going to a Spanish Catholic church, right? Didn't understand a word what they're saying, but he started reading the Bible. And so we started a relationship just a while back. I've been talking to him for about a year. I gave him a book, Who is Jesus? I told him, go read the Gospels over and over again. Just read them. And he had a difficulty in his relationship, and that has drawn him to find out if God is real or not. So he has begun to read even more of the Bible, but at the same time, he's now attending a church locally here in Charlotte every Sunday. And so he comes back and he tells me what he heard on Sunday, and how he's learning from the Bible. And so I prayed over him today. We're praying that he can, come to make that decision. But it's obvious that the Spirit of God is leading him to himself. That God is leading this young man to himself. So, I get those encounters, which is fabulous
Right,
because we're
right.
shepherding somebody
Mm-hmm.
to come to understand that he needs Christ. But also those who already know Christ, right? We all need help, right?
Right,
We know we
right,
need people
right,
that can
right,
be
right,
there
right,
to help
right.
counsel or pray over. Hey, can you pray for me? And so, especially when you're working with situations that are difficult, right? With people in addiction or people that are
Right.
struggling with habits and sins, right? It takes a toll, man. And
Ye-
so,
yeah,
and
that's
that's the
a-
way I connect it. Is hey, I want to help shepherd those who are even working in the field, right?
Right.
And I do the same with missionaries in different parts of the world. And
Mhm.
so, we all need someone, right? And
Yeah.
so, if God can use me to plant the seed of His truth, right, in the hearts of people, that's what we're called to do.
So how do you? And that's good. When I see you here talking to staff and residents, but we get to the residents. How do you think? So a lot of our residents come at different stages, different phases, seeking to know themselves, seeking to find out the issues,
Mm.
right? But also a lot of them not knowing that they need Christ to really change them and take this desire out. How do you interact with our residents on that level? Because we got them in all phases
Yeah,
of life.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, first of all, we can't change anybody or I can't convert anybody. Right?
Mhm.
I'm not called to do that,
Right.
right? What we try to do is just simply, hey, we have a passion for this book, the Bible, right?
Mhm.
And so it's interesting that through the Bible, we realize, first of all, who God is.
Right.
Secondly, we find out who we are, right? And then ultimately, we see that God's mission is one mission. And that mission is God reconciling man to himself.
To himself. Yeah.
And so the only thing really I could do is saying, how does that work,
Mhm.
right? How does that happen? Well, the scriptures are clear, and Jesus himself was clear. Is I'm doing this, right? I made the decision. I was willing to come, right? And I gave of myself. He gave his life. He was crucified, bearing. The Bible says he bore our sin, right? And then he was buried. 3 days later, he rose again with one purpose. And that purpose is to provide forgiveness to those who need it. And the Bible says that all of us need it. And so
Right.
the best thing I can do is simply share the message of God, right? And that's one message. But I do it in a way not expecting that anything I say is going to be important.
It's just a seed planted.
That's correct. It's
yeah.
God's work
Yeah.
and anybody's heart. And in the same way, we continue, even though we know Christ, we still need to grow, right?
Yeah.
you
Definitely.
ask yourself, what is the goal of God in our lives, right? And his goal is for us to be like his son, Jesus Christ.
Mm.
And so ultimately, God saves us with one purpose. And that purpose is for us to find ourselves living a life according to the character of Christ.
And growing into the character of Christ.
And
day
so,
to day.
so your decision making, the way you think, the way
Yeah, that's
you
good.
speak, the way you walk,
Yeah.
the people, everything I do, right, has to reflect the character of Christ.
Mhm.
And the only person that can do that in us is God.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so what tends to happen is our sin takes control, right?
Definitely.
And so we live a life that does not reflect that God is truly the center of our lives,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's
And
good.
so, and the same way with the residents. Just
Mhm.
last week I came and I was sitting there during lunch, and there were 3 residents, and so we just started talking about the Bible. And so, what do we do? And so I gave them my example. I said that same week I came to Christ. The guy that led me to Christ, he said, "I want you to sit down, David. I want you to write a list of sins, right?
Mhm.
And in that list, I want you to put your weaknesses, things that you know that you struggle with.
Right.
And then I want you to take the Bible," he said, "and I want you to find 3 verses for each one of those sins
Mhm.
that demonstrate why that is wrong, why God
That is good. That's
does
good.
not want me to do
to
that."
do that.
And so I told them, the Bible is, there's only one truth, and that's the Bible.
Right.
But if I don't apply the truth to my life, then there's nothing
Yeah,
will happen.
yeah.
And so what I did was I began to apply the Word of God to my own life.
Mhm.
And those became principles, biblical principles in my life
Mhm.
that later on were transformed to convictions, right?
Right.
And so
yeah.
the reason, for example, I don't drink alcohol is because of that principle that I placed 30 some years ago when I was 18 years old. that told me, hey, the Bible, even though the Bible doesn't say that drinking is a sin, right?
Right.
Always, it's when you go more than the
Maybe
usual.
go over. Yeah, yeah. Be
Right?
drunk with
So
wine. Yeah,
drunkenness is
yeah,
the sin.
Yeah.
But when you study the scriptures, you find out that the counsel is always abstinence. In Proverbs chapter 5 and other chapters like that, you see that the writers say, stay away from it. Don't even look at it, right? You don't look at the redness of the wine, it says, right? Why? Because it can cause an addiction, right? It can take you to a place where you never expected to find yourself and be. So, when I got to seminary, I started hearing this word conviction. So I went up to a professor and I said, what's having a conviction? What's that mean? And he looked at me and said, David, a conviction is something you're willing to give your life for. And I said, wow. I said, God, that's what I want. I want convictions in my life. And so you think about, first of all, my salvation. I'm convinced, and I was persuaded by the Spirit of God that I needed Christ, right? And only God can do that. And He led me to Him, and I gave my life to Him. He's my Lord. He's my Savior. But now I serve Him after 30-some years. Not because I'm waiting for God to give me something, because He's already given me everything I need.
Yeah, He give you everything you need, life.
But I wake up in the morning saying I'm convinced through the conviction that His Spirit has given me that I am called to give everything to Him. And I serve Him because I love Him, because of what He has done for me.
What He's done for me, yeah. And I think that's important too. You said conviction. A lot of times when you talk about the Bible, a lot of people's perception is, well, oh man, all of this God stuff, or man, all of these rules, man, you can't do this, you can't have fun. But if you really search and live by the principles of the Bible, it's just like a stop sign. The stop sign is there so you don't get ran over by traffic. The stop sign is there so there's some kind of control and rules that's best for you. It's not to say, no, I don't want you to have any fun. These things can take you down these roads and these paths. And I think those are a lot of the conversations I have as well here. A lot of times we have a lot of God talk here because they're cleaning up their lives and they're seeing life a little new. But a lot of times you have to stop too and realize, what is God trying to get me to do, or stop, or see, or open up? And I think it's a great, it's kind of good to work in a place like this, because you end up, God ends up opening your eyes day to day too, which strengthens you. Hey, I'm Ken Gober. This is the Intersection Podcast. I got my man, our chaplain, Dave Bogran, here with us. We're going to take a short pause, and we're going to come back, and we're going to talk to Dave about our two questions that we always ask. What is your why, and what was that crossroad that you had to make a decision? We'll be right back. All right, we're back agreeing. Look, I'm looking at Bogran. We're back again. I got our chaplain, one of the coolest cats to have a chaplain. He's ours. You can't have him. Our chaplain, Dave Bogran. When we're here for our second half of our show, it's been a great show to see how God has changed and worked in your life all throughout your life. Which is a thing that those that God has chosen, foreknown, and predestined, He has His hands on our lives from beginning to end. So this is the fun part of our show, man, where we just kind of like to dive just a little deep, man, and just ask the question. Our first question is, so yes, you love the Lord. Yes, you serve the Lord. Yes, you've seen the Lord work miraculous things in your life, in your family's lives, and in others' lives. The question is, so what is your why? When you wake up in the morning, what is your why? We know what you're passionate about, who you're passionate about, but what is your why? Summarize that.
Well, for me personally, my why is Christ. To realize, like we talked about before, everything He has done for me, but also to understand that we are called to be witnesses, right? And so when we see Acts chapter 1, verse 8, where He's, speaking to His disciples, He was about to ascend to the Father. He looks at him and He says, when the power comes upon you, you will become witnesses, right? And I always teach that verse, and I say, what Jesus was giving there was not a command. What he was giving there was a promise. So he says, those who have the Spirit of God will become witnesses. And so that word in the Greek, witness, is where we get our word martyr from, right? So the fact, of what we're called to do is simply to live for Christ. And that's what Paul, the Apostle Paul, through all his letters, spoke about the importance. Hey, I've been crucified with Christ. I no longer live. It's Christ who lives in me and through me. And so what encourages me to know that, hey, God gives me another day of life to be able to be part of his plan and his purpose of being a witness, for his honor and for his glory. So that's what motivates me. That's why I get up in the morning. That's why the first thing I do is open this book.
Open it, right. And
I say, Lord, speak to me, change me, right? Mold me into what you desire, and that the character of Christ could be seen through me, man.
And I think a lot of times too, people will hear that and say, yeah, but I'm not a preacher, or yeah, I'm not called to be a disciple or apostle. But I think what people don't realize is being a witness is living your day-to-day life with the light of Christ shown through you, right? It's a kind word. It's a word that you could say, but you didn't say. It is maybe not even a prime example. When a lot of times when I'm around friends or new people that just know me or just met me, and a lot of times when they don't hear certain types of languages come out, and I'm talking about hanging with the fellas, come out my mouth. Eventually someone will ask and say, man, you go to church or something? Those types of things. Man, you're not drinking nothing. No, man, I'm cool. Yeah. I'm not saying, man, you shouldn't be drinking. I used to do that. None of that. I think being a witness as well is being a representative of Christ. So eventually, without you even saying anything, they come to say, man, what is this?
Yeah, there were a lot of events in my life that God used, but one, a week after I came to Christ, a friend of mine came up to me and said, hey, man, you ready to go to the nightclub? I used to love going. We used to live 5-10 minutes from the border with Tijuana, Mexico. Right?
Okay, yeah. Oh, San Diego.
So I was San Diego. I'd crossed the border since, I was 14 years old. Mm-hmm. We would hit those nightclubs. We would have a ball, right? And so when I came to Christ that same week, right, I knew something had happened. I remember my struggle, for example, I would listen to Christian music in the morning and then my same old rap, secular music in the evening, right? So I was struggling. I knew something had happened. But that friend of mine came up to me and said, hey, you ready to go Saturday night to the nightclub? Ooh, I remember I looked up. I said, Lord, I promise it's the last time
I'm going to go.
and I won't go again, right? And so, man, I walked into that place.
Felt different.
And I knew I shouldn't have been in there.
Yeah.
And I literally, I started to feel sick. And so I went up to my friend. I said, take me home. I don't feel well. So he said, okay, wait for me in the front door. So I stood there for about 10, 15 minutes. I saw all these people coming in, smiles on their faces, ready to have a good time. When all of a sudden I looked at a couple that I recognized. And that couple were Sunday school teachers of the church that I started to attend. Mm-hmm. And that shook me, man. I mean, I could have made the decision like many do. Well, if these Christians, quote unquote Christians, are going to live this, I'm going to keep living. I'm going to live that life up too. But no, I went home at 18 years old, man. I wasn't at a Bible conference or a Christian camp. I was in a nightclub, bro. And that night, the Spirit of God shook me. And I went home. I didn't stay there. I went home. I got on my knees next to my bed. And I said, Lord, tonight you have shown me that with you.
This is it. Yeah.
With you, it's everything.
Yeah.
Or it's nothing. And I said, Lord, I never want you to use my unfaithfulness to you to challenge others. I want you to use my faithfulness to you so that others can live the life that you desire them to live. That following Sunday, I went to that classroom where they usually gave class. God, they didn't know who I was. It was a big church. But I walked up to that guy, and I said, I saw you a couple weeks ago walk into that nightclub. And he looked at me. What are you talking about? He says, I saw you walk into that nightclub, and I came here this morning to say thank you for what you did.
Thank you for what you did.
Because God used your unfaithfulness to challenge my life. And so, those events in my life that God allowed has shown me that truly, if we're going to make a difference, right? And the only way to get out of the problems that we have and the struggles that we have is allowing for Christ to be king of our lives.
Right.
And so, like you say, if we're going to make that difference, then that means that, God, I want you to use my faithfulness to you, man.
Yeah, you got,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And so I remember his jaw dropped that day. He couldn't believe it. He turned red at the moment. But I said, you know what? God used you, and I want to thank you. And so, and that's the decision we have to make.
Right.
Either God's going to use our unfaithfulness, which it's a horrible way for God to work. God does what he pleases, but that's a horrible way.
Right.
But it's better when God uses our faithfulness to him to challenge others.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So great, man. So this has been great. This is I could be here all day.
Yeah, that's right.
This has been great. We want to go to our last and final question, man. And that question is now I'm a music guy. So I used to watch all of the blues movies and Robert Johnson, The Crossroads.
Yep.
In the movie, he was down on his luck. He had just his guitar, no money or nothing. And in the movie, they say it's a true story, but I don't know. He couldn't play guitar that good. And he found himself on a road, a dark road, and he found himself at a crossroad. And he could either go left or he could go right. Tell us about one, if you've had a moment in your life, tell us about that.
Yeah, the most difficult moment in our lives was 8 years ago. We had moved to Charlotte a year before. We were excited. We were at a new ministry, a new church. God was doing a work. And all of a sudden, my son, who was 11 years old, was diagnosed with osteosarcoma, which is a bone cancer. Osteosarcoma is a very aggressive cancer. And so usually people don't find out that they have the cancer until it's all spread. But God's grace was good. My son was playing basketball, and he hit knees with another player. And so from that point on, he never recuperated. He was always limping. And so we took him to a family doctor, and they were looking for fractures or a broken bone, but they didn't see anything in the x-ray. But he was never well. And so that led us to go to a specialist, where the specialist saw a dot on his bone, a black dot.
Gotcha.
We went to go get an MRI done, and they confirmed that he had osteosarcoma. So immediately he had to go through chemo treatments. So he went through 18 chemo treatments, a full knee and upper tibia replacement. You talk about difficulty. And it's interesting, as you see and you read scripture, you find that every man or woman that God used, each of them went through testing.
Yeah.
Went through difficulties, right? And that's what God uses, right? And there's a verse in Proverbs that says that what God does through testing is simply he does away with that which is not good, right? So that's what being tested is all about. And like you say, there's only two options. Either you fill your heart with bitterness towards God, and you say, God, I'm running away from you. I don't want this. Or, you know more of who he is, and you allow God to fulfill his purposes in you. And it was tough for me because I had been serving God for 20-some years. And I remember that night we found out, man, I was upset. You look at the life of Job, and you see a man that he complained, but he complained to the right person.
Yeah, to the right person.
and to the right place.
And he was
which
put
was
in
God.
his place. He was put in his place too, but he went to the right person. Right,
so
right.
He did not complain to his friends, even though he had all the liberty to complain
or
to his
his
three
wife.
friends. Or his wife. He complained to God, right?
Yeah.
But God, like you said, taught him that he is sovereign, right? And so I remember that night, man, I talking with God. I said, Lord, what are you doing, man? I've been serving you. I gave my life to you at 18 years old. I've been serving you all these years. I've tried to give you the best I have with my failures and with my missteps. But and immediately God brought to my mind the story of Abraham and Isaac, right? Where God tells Abraham, I want you to give what you love the most. Now, can you imagine, right? Abraham had been waiting for this son for 20-some years. God gives him the son of the promise. And then he asks him once again, give me that son. I want you to sacrifice. Not only give your son, I want you to kill your son. I want you to sacrifice him. And it's interesting that God was detailed because he said, I want you to give Isaac.
He told me exactly
because If he would have said, "Hey, I want you to sacrifice your son,"
he
probably,
might have went and found Ishmael. Come on back.
God
Come on
said,
back.
"No. I want this
The
son."
one who
Right?
you love. Yeah.
And so Abraham should have been on the beach, right, at that moment, right, resting because he had lived a life of faith, a life of trust with God. But God tested him, right? So immediately, I remember my heart was just full of peace. I just felt the Spirit of God just giving me a peace because I said to myself, if Abraham was tested,
who am I?
The father of the faith, right? Our patriarch. If he was tested, who am I not to be tested as well? So God gave us a verse in Psalm 73. It says, "My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever." And so, because the night before we went to go visit the specialist to confirm that he had cancer, we asked God, give us a verse that could be our statement, our root, our foundation as we go through this difficulty. And that's the verse that he gave us. And so the psalmist says, "Hey, man, we're just spoiling away, right? I mean, we're all." I always say, "How you doing?" I'm getting old, man. I'm getting old.
Yeah.
My kids are growing, and I'm getting old. We're all. It's interesting. We are born to die.
Born to die.
Right. And so the fact is, what is giving you life in the inside, right? And the only person that can give us life that we were talking about off camera, the only person that can give us true life is Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And so my son, man, God prepared his heart. Ken, it was amazing. We started watching the Bible Project about 4 months before his diagnosis. And so at one point we watched the video on Jeremiah, the prophet Jeremiah. So after finishing that video, my son looks at me and he says, "Dad, why do these men suffer so much?" I mean, Jeremiah preached the gospel or the message of God for over 40 years and nobody listened. He didn't have one convert. His own family, plotted against him, wanted to get rid of him. And so he looks at me, 11 years old, and he says, "Dad, why do these men suffer so much?" And so I looked at him and said, "Alex, listen, these men were obedient to God. And this shows us that following Christ is not easy.
Not easy.
There's difficulty. There's moments that we don't understand, that we don't comprehend. There's situations that we don't want to experience, but we go through because God allows these things to happen because what he's doing is raising up a platform so that many may know who he is, so that many may come to listen to the gospel of Jesus Christ." So we went to the specialist. And man, Ken, I tell you, I was broken, man. Can you, like a father, to see your son, man, to know everything he was going to go through. As the doctors explained, all his chemo treatments, the surgery, man, the only thing he was worried about, he said, "Doctor, am I going to grow?" Because he loved basketball, man. That's what he loved. What he wanted to do was to grow, man. And so I'm there. I didn't know how to react. I was in pain, right? And so, he shed a tear after the doctor confirmed that he had osteosarcoma. And then, I hugged him. We prayed in that room, and then we walked out. And then as we walked out, my son looked at me and he said, "Dad, Jeremiah."
That's good.
And
that's good.
I said, "Lord, help us. We need your help going through this difficulty." And my son is 19. He's in remission. We started a foundation in his name, so we're connected to the Levine Children's Hospital. And God started a prayer movement around the world because of my son. I received messages from Morocco, from China, from Turkey, from different parts of the world. And the people that would say, "We're praying for Alex. My children are praying for Alex." I had parents telling me, "Hey, we do not go to sleep until we pray."
They pray.
Our kids say, "We're not going to sleep until we pray for Alex." And so the prayer movement that God started through this difficulty, man. Dude, when you see your son that cannot move from a bed for a month after he had his surgery, his knee replacement, it's hard, man.
Yeah.
You see kids his age running around and seeing your son in bed, man, trying to understand and cope. But we go back. We go back to this verse, Psalm 73:26, where the psalmist says, "Even though everything is spoiling away, everything is dying, you are our rock," right? You are our safe haven. You are a foundation, and you are our portion forever. And
portion.
I love that phrase, because that goes back to a passage in Deuteronomy 18, where remember all the tribes were receiving their land, right? So they're
getting their portion.
They're getting their portion. They're receiving their land. But there was one tribe. The
you gotta stay
the
over
Levites.
here,
The Levites.
You didn't get anything.
That's right. God says,
serve me.
That's right. That you're not receiving anything. You know why? He says, because I am going to be your portion.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's good. I didn't think of it that way.
Yeah. And so he says, God, I'm the only thing you need. And so when you talk about residents, when you talk about people struggling with sin and habits, they've got to come to a place where God is enough.
Is enough. Yeah.
If God is not enough, then there's always going to be struggle.
Right. And you're always going to reach for something else to fill that void.
And so, and that's why we go towards everything we see and what people do, right? So that to us was a moment where either, and I looked at my wife, we looked at each other and said, either we're going to follow Christ and we're going to accept it and say, God, you have a purpose. Yeah. Or we're going to fill our hearts with, or we're going to fill our hearts with bitterness. But, where does that take me? I mean, it takes me with the life with no hope.
Back in here.
That's
somewhere
right.
It's
back in here.
Right.
That's right.
Somewhere in here.
And so we're thankful, man. God is using my son. My son is actually at the seminary that we studied.
Wow.
Yeah, he went to study for a year. He wants to study medicine. So he's coming back July 16th. He's going to get his undergrad at UNCC and study medicine.
19.
But God, used him. He's using him and dealt with us, right? I mean, listen, God humbles us, man. There's only one place God wants to find us, and that's on our knees, right? There's no other place.
No other place.
Where God rejoices in a greater manner.
In praising him.
When we're on our knees, asking, Lord, I can't do it. And I go to you because I got no other place to go.
Man, that is good. That's a way to end my portion. Let God be your portion. I like that, Dave, my man.
Thank you, buddy.
Our chaplain, Dave Bogran. We are here, Charlotte Rescue Mission. This is the Intersection Podcast. We'll see you at your crossroads.